Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Oh, welcome back. I'm looking forward more than ever talking with her again today because by the way, she is an intuitive. She can give you healing messages from the other side. She's also, this is interesting, she's also a therapist, a marriage and family therapist. So once you receive the information from the other side, spirit guides, wherever it's coming from, she can help you process that. Very unique. Today, we're going to talk about the interesting things as an intuitive the weird things, if you will, that she's experienced, things that show up, things that have become a way of life now for Noelle Deane, who is back with us. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Very well, very well. I'm
Oh, good.
intrigued. We've talked about a few things, unusual things that have shown up maybe in our lives, even we're very transparent about a family situation that took place a few weeks ago. Um, some interesting things that showed up there. But in all this time of being an intuitive and providing insight, sometimes closure for people, what weird things have you experienced?
Well, I just want to give the caveat that um, sometimes there's so much, like I don't really think to remember everything, but I just was having this moment of thinking about having this conversation and just listed a few things, not a few, more than a few, things that I've only experienced like once or twice that were kind of weird, and then things that have like become normal. So, yeah,
Hmm.
and I think we all have unique things. You were talking about how you do this thing with a not a light bulb, but where you can stare off at something and you're kind of transported. And I tried it. I didn't give it enough time, but I didn't feel like it was going to go anywhere. So there was a part of me that's like, well, that's Steve's like superpower. We all have these different cool little things that we can do when we give it time and attention. And I love that that's yours. And at some point, I'll ask your guides, if you want me to, why you do that and what exactly is happening, because it'd be cool to understand that better, right?
It didn't just show up for me. Somebody suggested it, and that's where I did it. Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
And it was like a meditation when it first happened. So I was kind of directed or called to task to focus on this one little object. Could be any object, by the way. I've done it before. And then somehow I feel like I don't feel what's around me is there at that. I'm not,
Mm.
there's a wall there, there's a window there, whatever it is. It kind of goes away and you get into this zone. I guess that's the best word for it. Um, but yeah, I guess you got to be open to it and just like, I'm just going to stare, see what happens. And then and more times than not, I find myself in either memories are coming back, clarity, things like that. I got nothing. I've done it a few times. It works. It's kind of interesting.
Well, and how you describe that mindset of like you're not trying, but you're open. Um, we've talked about like what does it feel like to get mediumship messages? Because I'm an intuitive medium, so I could do actually either kind of reading, but we have to be relaxed, we have to be open, we have to have our mind kind of clear of clutter, otherwise there's no space for something to come in. But the trying, like when you feel like you're trying really hard or trying too hard, then you're probably focused on something that it may be blocking it. So that's part of it. Like when you're like, yeah, well, we'll see. That kind of attitude is actually, I think, a great attitude to have about these things. I think I've talked before here about going for walks and then asking for messages, asking for, let's say, help to prepare for the podcast. And then sometimes I'm kind of getting nothing and I just put the music back on. Other times I get stuff and it's surprising. So here's some of my things.
Sure.
So one thing that I've had for years, and I also want to say a lot of things that I'm going to list are just things that I wouldn't think to tell anybody about. And everybody's got their things. I would love to hear other people's things of what they get if they would want to email us, and then we can talk about them on a future show. That
Sure.
would be totally fun and awesome. So for a long time, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think of it as like energy in the air. So I see these little translucent things that look, I want to say like amoebas, Not like I actually know what an amoeba looks like, but it's almost like a little rod or something, and they just kind of float around. And I don't see it all the time. A job I had when I used this one bathroom, and it was, in the mountains, and it was a group home. There was a lot of healing that was supposed to take place. I used to see this all the time there, and I see it once in a while now. I don't know why I see it in the moments that I do,
Hmm.
but I do.
What do you
One,
let's before we change it.
please. Okay.
What do you see? What do you think it is? And why do you think it's showing up?
What I think, I really do think it's energy. I don't think it's like people, the energy of people. Like I assume those come as orbs, but I could be wrong.
Hmm.
And I don't know, maybe I'm just getting reminders of, there's all of this stuff around us, and then there's like this ethereal stuff that shows up when you're sort of looking out of the corner of your eye. And having both exist at the same time, the word miraculous is coming to me. And it is in its own way. We're living these lives and we get so caught up, and it's easy to forget that we live in a world of energy and everything is energy and it's all around us. So maybe it's just reminders. I don't know that I've gotten it at particular times when I'm like, please give me a sign, please. Like, I don't think I'm ever feeling that.
So you're seeing these things and you think that they're connections to energy, or maybe energy exposing or expressing itself, or you just, like you cook something. Sometimes you see a little smoke, sometimes you don't. You think it could
Mm.
be that where it's just the byproduct of energy just around and you're picking up on it? And sort of like when you take a picture and you see these round things and they're sometimes translucent, people look and say, "Oh, those are orbs. That's energy." You think it's kind of the same thing? Sounds like you're going there with that.
In my head, orbs, and I really wish, and I've asked my loved ones to show me orbs, and nobody is entertaining me in that kind of way. But, there's those green sunspots that can show up in photos. I have to rule out that it's a sunspot, but
Sure.
like orbs, I mean, things just go flying through the screen sometimes. Not that often, but it happens, and they float around in random patterns. And to me, that's a loved one of the person that I'm talking to or myself.
First time I ever saw orbs in a different way. Side note, when people started talking about them decades ago, uh, I always did morning radio. And when we'd invite people to email your picture and you got an orb, let's take a look at it. Yeah, whether those were or not, don't know. And it was 3 years ago. I went to a meditation, never did one before. Friend invited me before during the this meditation, and it got very deep. Like people were crying.
Hmm.
Um, Somebody took a picture, actually two people, and there were those things called orbs around everyone. Now,
Hmm.
I was there. There was no filters going on. Two different people took pics on their phone. Same type of thing was going on above the people, including myself.
Hmm.
There was a lot of energy in the room. So I am fully convinced those were orbs. There's no other explanation. There wasn't sunspots. It was dark. It was like there was no barely any light. There's no other explanation. And I'm a skeptic. Like, let me punch a hole in that. I can't. So I really think those were what they call orbs.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just talking to a friend of mine, if those of you who might be watching this on video, or you can if you want to. So I've got a pretty blank, clear wall on a part of my background. And my friend was saying it's a little bit boring. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to put anything there because there are times I can see energy moving around in this background when I'm on video, or other people will notice the room changes color a lot, depending on who I'm connecting with. Now, it can happen if I move my arms, but a lot of times I'm not moving my arms. And I live in San Diego, so often the sky is clear, so it's not necessarily clouds coming through that would make my camera act different. But there
Hmm.
are people in spirit that can change the color that shows up from your camera. And I've seen it so many times, and certainly not just on my end. I've seen it
Wow.
on other people's ends. Yeah, one woman that I used to work with, her uh, loved one in spirit was into electronics, and it was shocking to me how different he could make her background look. It went from super dark to super light, all within, 5 seconds, and just kept going back and forth while we were
How was
talking
he
about him and to connect with him.
how was he doing that? Or it was just the energy?
Somehow manipulating the camera.
Physically or energetically?
Energetically, he's in spirit,
He's in spirit.
energetically. And I
Yeah.
mean, what a beautiful way to really show up. You
Mm.
can't deny that your loved one is there when like crap's moving around and you're like, what the hell? There's nothing I'm doing that would create that. Um,
I will tell you
yeah.
this many times when talking about energy and going deeper into it, even during a podcast, weird things happen. Things go wonky, things disconnect. I'm not touching anything. And I mean, I've had psychics before that, had headphones on during a live radio show and they're doing a reading, all legit. And the headphones just crumble off their ear. I witnessed it. I'm like, what's going on? And like, it, there's something there. That's what I'm gonna say. Um, who knows what could happen today? We'll see. By the way, instant feedback, Steve at gmail.com for anybody that wants to share things that happen around them energetically, a la orbs, whatever it might be. We won't judge. We'll learn here. For you, what else? What other weird things have you experienced?
So years ago, I remember having a time of intense stress, and I don't know if this is why it happened, but actually, kind of in the same instance, I saw this green orb float around the room that I was in, which I knew at that moment was my grandmother. I felt my grandfather touch my hand because I was just laying there in my own meditation to connect with them. And I actually heard him call my name in my ear. Now, I've never experienced the hand, like feeling him on my hand or hearing him again since then. It was just a one-time thing. Also, around that time, I remember one night hearing like what sounded like a radio station in my head, but like a talk radio station, not music. And then at one point, I just was like, oh, this is so weird. And then I hear this male announcer say, well, let's go to Noelle. What do you have to share? Or something like that. And I was like, what the hell? And I got pretty freaked out. And that only happened once. When I was first learning mediumship, I was going to what's called a development circle. So it's just a group of people who get together. I don't say professionally facilitated, but it's facilitated by an experienced person. And sometimes the energy of different beings would come in and come over somebody's body. Like I saw a fully native woman, like long braids and the whole outfit on top of somebody who was in the circle. And there was one time, and I grew up as a Jew. I don't know that we really believe in Jesus, or I never really gave it a whole lot of thought. But the energy of Jesus showed up on this man who was standing right next to me. And and this happened 20 plus years ago, and I can remember it so clearly
Mm.
that the figure of Jesus that I saw, and not like a statue kind of thing, like a person. He was a little bit shorter than me, and he had these big, brown, soft, gentle, compassionate eyes. And I'd never really thought too much about, but when I saw that, I was amazed. That was beautiful. Um, and yeah, about, I don't know, maybe a year ago, a close friend of mine whom I met because her daughter passed as a young adult. And her daughter's friends are getting married at this time of life. And my friend was going to one of those uh, weddings. And it was very upsetting because her daughter, in her mind, she's missing all these beautiful um, pinnacle moments in life because she passed too soon. And I see this, I guess it's called an aberration or an apparition. So I'm not even half asleep. I'm half awake or two-thirds awake in the middle of the night. And I see a visual of my friend in a red dress and her daughter in a wedding dress. And they're helping each other get dressed. Like in my bedroom in the middle of the night, clear as day. It was dark, but not too dark. And I told my friend about it. And I think it gave her, because, part of the grief is understanding that her daughter doesn't feel like she's missing out. She was looking forward to doing those things with her daughter. But there was a lot of symbolism in this beautiful visual of them helping each other get dressed as the mother of the bride and the bride. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it was really beautiful.
Hmm.
Um, another thing actually that's related to you, Steve. So before we started doing this podcast, I was pretty nervous about I've just haven't done a podcast in this kind of way before. And so I was trying to understand how to connect with you energetically, not in a bad boundary kind of way, but to help myself have some relaxation. And every time I thought of you, I would get this visual of this figure eight, like this white energy moving in this figure eight around the two of us.
Hmm. What do you think that means?
I took it as we were going to be able to connect. And we have. I mean, a lot of
Hmm.
synchronicities happen sometimes while we're doing this that we're both like, oh, wow, really?
How did that happen?
Yeah, I didn't expect that. Um, but it was also helping me calm down because I was pretty anxious. But I'd never seen anything that way before. And it didn't feel like something I was trying to like artificially create to manipulate something. It was like, it felt to me like a, hey, this is going to be fine.
Now that figure eight, isn't that also the symbol for infinity?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's something there. I don't. I try not to overthink things, but when you start thinking a little bit deeper, uh, things
Yeah.
show up. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
and
find it.
figure eight is symbolic, I think, in a variety of ways. Um, so those are things I've only experienced like once or twice. Some of the things that probably might seem normal or would have seemed weird or would have seemed weird to me years ago that have become normal is there are times I feel like there's this sort of constant flow of information coming through me, whether I'm in certain meetings, not even during like a mediumship reading, but I used to have groups that I would meet. I still do at times, but and a lot of times just information just comes out. I'm not even trying to do that. But I feel just that plugged in to the universe or source that it just kind of keeps coming. I'm not certainly not efforting to do it, but it wasn't even really so much my intention. Feeling energy in random areas of my body, feeling energy and sensation in numb areas of my body. So I'm a breast cancer survivor. I had surgery, I had a mastectomy, and there are times and I have, a section of my body that's numb. And there are times I will get a sharp little poke or a sensation or a throbbing sensation in an area where I feel nothing, and it'll be related to something that's happening in the moment. Somebody was just sharing about having a pain somewhere, and then I swear I got a pain in that area, and it just seemed very obvious to me that these were sympathy pains. Um, I'll be
Hmm.
walking and I'll feel like an ache in one of my knees. Now I'm 56. I'm old enough to have an ache in my knee, but it'll just sort of suddenly happen. And I've learned to kind of tune in, like, oh, hey, knee, what's happening? And I'll get a little message like, you're afraid to move forward or you're hanging on to this. And then when I'm like, oh, yeah, thanks. And as soon as I'm acknowledging it, just like any sign, it disappears.
Well, that's interesting. So when things show up, whether they're physical, life in general, whatever it is, I'm getting from you that it's a good idea to ask, what do you got for me? Why am I feeling that? What's going on there? And I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer in the body is way more intelligent than we give it credit for. We hold on to negative emotions, negative energy down to a cellular level, stuff that we've experienced decades ago. It's still in
Mhm.
us. It
Yeah.
just, that's why the body's so amazing. It's not stupid. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's reasonable if you want an answer. And it might not, you got a little thing in your knee. It might not be a physical thing. It could be an energetic thing that is manifesting in your knee or wherever, whatever it might be. So ask for the answer. Interesting. Hmm.
Yes, and it would be symbolic to be in your knee if you're having a fear of moving forward, like taking a step forward in, let's say, a job or a career or a new move. So there is symbolism in all of that of where you would be feeling it also, probably. But I am learning to ask more questions. And even from song, I get songs all the time. And I got a song the other day, rock the boat, don't rock the boat, baby, rock the boat, don't tip the boat over.
The Hughes Corporation from 1974.
I knew you would know that.
I don't know why I did.
Hey, you remember
That's the
those
number
things.
one song too, by the way. But anyway, good song.
Great song,
Uh,
very catchy. And I'm like, I haven't heard that song, I don't know how many decades. I really haven't heard that song. So I remembered to ask. And I immediately get that it was Grandpa Joe and his last name. So my grandfather, who had a message for my mother. And it was just so unexpected. And I see him how I used to imagine, how he used to dress, which would be like a button down, short sleeve shirt, very kind of properly dressed man. It was just
Hmm.
so interesting how he came through and with a very clear message that I actually delivered to my mother yesterday. Sorry, why did I just bring that up? Oh,
Why
songs and asking
why
why.
that
Yeah.
song? Why?
Oh, because he wants me to rock the boat and talk to my mother about something that I would not normally talk to her about because I would be afraid to upset her or piss her off a little bit. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so the rock the boat, thank you for asking that. So rocking the boat was like, sorry, Noelle, but deliver this message because she needs to also rock the boat about a relationship where she's been stuck.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I wonder, I always wonder if there's something deeper. Yes, okay, rock the boat, it's a term, right?
Hmm.
Title of that song. I always wonder if there's other reason, like when you talked about your grandfather and Al Jarreau and Golden Gate Bridge, because that's a reference in the song. And yeah, there was, after some thinking, some kind of connection there to it. It's interesting how things show up. Like I'm always looking for more. Not that I'm looking for it, but I believe there are answers and signs there.
Yeah.
And if you look for them, they'll materialize. Again, I'm not just trying to find something. If it makes sense, I'm not going to say, rock the boat, yeah, your mom had a boat, nothing like that. So, deeper, within lyrics or why things come up like that. Hmm.
Look, 1974 could have been an important part of that as well. I mean, I don't know that you can dig too deeply as long as you're not trying to
That's what
like
I'm saying.
manufacture information. But I'm with you. I think the more we ask, and I wish I was more curious, and I have said this for many years. So I'm trying to sort of push myself to remember, oh, wait, why am I hearing this song, Rock the Boat? What does that even mean? And then it was
Right.
clear
Hmm.
it's about both of us rocking, like really rocking the boat in the way that that phrase
Sure, sure, sure. Yeah.
describes things.
But,
So
it was on your radar anyway about rocking the boat. And then that song showed up.
I wasn't going to talk to my mother about this thing that he wants her to do. He wants her to resolve a relationship where there's been conflict for years,
Uh-huh.
and that's what he was requesting. Before
Wow.
you leave the earth, I need you to make this right, or I want you to make this right.
Hmm.
Very poignant, right to the point. I
Yeah.
just found this quote. Um, and I think I've mentioned I take sleep medicine that has CBD and some THC. So by the time I'm ready to head to bed, I'm tired and sleepy, but I'm also like feeling kind of head high. And sometimes maybe this is easier for certain people to come through at those times. So that's when he came through. And actually, my grandmother, his wife, when they were here, often will come through when I'm in that state of mind as well. So that might also help them because I'm a little bit loopy and my mood is lighter and I'm not listening to anything. I'm not probably thinking about too much. And that might
I
also
gotcha.
assist them to come in.
Hmm. Well, it's also that it brings you into CBD, THC, into just a different awareness and where you're just not worrying about this stuff out here.
Yeah.
Um, Loosely put, the reason why people talk about psychedelics now, been around
Mm-hmm.
for decades,
Mm-hmm.
where, microdosing gives you, and I know doctors, high level doctors that have tried that and had a lot of clarity.
Mm,
And
very
that's
nice.
that
Mm-hmm.
kind of brings them out of their body or out of their
Mm-hmm.
mind for a moment to see things in a different light, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're so headstrong. We're always, thinking, worrying, oh, I gotta pay the rent, gotta do this, got that, gotta, post a note here, gotta, all this going on where you just need to just, if we could get to that point where we can just focus, think, be truly in the moment, we probably
Yeah,
would see more of this stuff that we're talking about right now.
definitely. So, do you have another one of yours that you'd like to share?
Ooh, I'd have to think about that. It's song lyrics, and a lot of times I haven't figured them out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I know you mentioned my father and his songs that come up, and there's certain references, and I know if I figure them out, there's an answer. I don't
Yeah.
doubt it for a second. That's why this stuff is so cool when it shows up, or a certain lyric that keeps playing in your mind. Like, what is
Hmm.
going? Why is that there? There's a reason. I don't think it's just catchy lyric. There's a reason for it.
Definitely. And and for everybody to find their way to do that digging to whatever
Hmm.
degree they want to do. So for some people, if you sit with, let's say, a notebook in front of you and you just start mindlessly writing, like that free flow thought thing, you might ask the question and then just let it try to come out through the pen as you're writing and not thinking too much about it, not being really deliberate about what you're writing, but just whatever comes to you. And that's a tip that I think we've talked about a little bit, but what I'd really encourage people, including you, if you want to, and I kind of do this at this point too, is I assume now that I can connect. So trying to bypass a little bit of that self-doubt. If you can assume or imagine or even pretend that you can connect in the way you want to, whatever speaks to everybody's individual hearts, the thing that it kind of draws you in. It's different for everybody. But just go with, I must be feeling this, interested in this, curious about this for a reason. Let me just try it and assume I can until you find out otherwise that you can't connect to whatever that is, like all of these lyrics. If you're like, I'm just going to write 3 sentences about whatever comes to me about this and just see how it goes, but trying to assume that you are that connected, which is why you're hearing them, more than you're like, no, I'm not an intuitive, I can't do this. Or I mean, you don't know what you can and can't do in this realm. You don't know until you actually try. None of us do.
It's so I'm trying to explain this in my mind here. Is it more of a believe it and it shall be? What do I mean by that? Believe that there are messages for you and you're going to pull something out of it and it's going to be meaningful. Not like you're just looking for something, but to believe that you can decipher or figure out what you've been given, whether it's a song lyric, whatever it might be. Is that how you mean it?
Yeah, and before you even get to that stage, whatever you pick up on, assume that you really are picking up on something. So I have a friend who's going to have surgery tomorrow, and I know that he wears a medallion that was his dad's who passed recently. And I just had this sense, like I'm just seeing a visual of him trying to wear the medallion around his neck, not being allowed to do that. I'm seeing him, the visual I'm getting is he's wrapping it around his ankle and then he's putting a sock on. So I sent that to him just because I'm not trying to think about him and his socks or his medallion or, that's so the surprising and unexpected that we've talked about. I just went with it and I sent that to him and I won't read what he wrote back because he used, language I try not to use too much on our podcast, but basically, where in the hell did you get this information?
Mm,
Um, Now, I wasn't trying. I'm just assuming, well, I wasn't trying to think of this. So this has got to be a message. You could say, I haven't thought about this song in 20 years. So there's got to be something here. And just go with it. Assume this is most likely information because you're not trying to generate that. And that's the thing is like you've talked about things dropping in, it just sort of pops into your head. We're not making this stuff up. We really are all that connected. The only
mhm.
difference maybe is that I know to really go with those things, but you have to learn to do that. And I had to learn to do that too. And I didn't for a long time. Now I try to do it really like not to use that term purposely, but like religiously in a consistent way. I try to focus on that.
Intentionally. And by the
Yeah,
way,
thank you.
we're
Thank
out of
you.
time. Like we're way over
Aw.
time. I looked up and I'm like, am I seeing it right? Um, one thing in closing here, when we talk about lyrics, um, look at the lyrics. Don't
Mm,
just listen to them because I just did that a second ago about a song for another time. But some clarity,
very nice.
interesting, and it's
Beautiful.
related to my father.
Aw. I actually got for a second. I Cats in the Cradle was coming in for me. But I thought, oh, that's kind of, and that's where I was questioning, because that's a typical father-son song. Was I imagining that? But if I come back later and I ask your dad and I get it, then that's validation. So, man, I love having these conversations. I feel like the guy at the end of Conjunction Junction, I think about when the kid goes, oh, darn, it's over. I'm like,
this is the longest podcast I've done in forever. I'm not even kidding. I'm looking up at the time. Like, we're way over. They're going to shut us down. I'm not even kidding. I couldn't believe when I looked up. Like, there's no way. We're like halfway in. But
it's an engaging conversation to talk about this stuff. So,
I
and I have more that I'll share next time. So I can be reached and found at connectingwithnoelle.com. It's Noelle. Anything you want to share, instant feedback, steve@gmail.com, or you can send it to me, connectingwithnoelle@gmail.com. Please let us know what your superpower is, what you're curious about. And look, call in sometime, because we'd love to have more callers. That would be really fun.
For sure. You're not crazy. There's a reason you're getting this.
You're not crazy. I mean, if you are, you would know it.
Yeah.
If you're just picking up on stuff, you're just like the rest of us. And I didn't say my disclaimer, but I'm not saying that as a licensed therapist. I'm just saying that as a human being.
Yep. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Yep. We'll talk soon. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.